Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back. And today we have an NBA debate with my man, none other than Brandon, also known as Sam Darnold's forehead on Twitter. You can find him there. But how you doing today?
I am honored to be back on the number one YouTube channel about basketball or just in general about anything.
Yeah,
And yeah, I'm ready to talk about some players.
you got it on your jersey too. Is that a Daniel Gibson jersey? Or...
Yes, sir. Daniel Boobie Gibson.
I like that. I like that. So we're gonna kind of follow the same format we did for the Finals MVP video. We're gonna start from honorable mention, work our way from 5 to 1. But yeah, if you want, I mean, you are the guest here. If you want to give me your honorable mention first and maybe any reason why, then you can go ahead.
Yes, sir. So my honorable mention, I wanted to pick a guy who he was good, but he was never really that good. Like his one season wasn't that good, but he did grab a 40 mil extension and just hopped right out the NBA right after he got that, and that's Larry Sanders. Like his few years on the Bucks, I guess he was good, but he never really had a statistic year that actually stood out. And then he grabbed that extension and just popped right out the NBA, which was crazy.
Yeah, it was weird. I remember like at the time, I think he basically like retired, and then he came back for like barely with the Cavs a few years later, like a couple games. That's a good one. That's a good one. My honorable mention, I believe, was teammates for a very short stint with Larry Sanders, believe it or not, on the Milwaukee Bucks. And I'm going with specifically in 2017, the season that Jabari Parker had. You know, he averaged like 20 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. I thought he was going to maybe be an all-star that year, or he was like very close to. He actually was playing better than Middleton that year because Middleton had so many injuries. But after that, like, he basically never even came close to averaging 20 points a game again. And I know injuries played a part in it. That's why I put it as like an honorable mention. But I think it should be worth noting. And now, like, people look at him as like a draft bust kind of, and he's kind of barely hanging on in the NBA. So that was my honorable mention on this list.
Yeah, I like that one. I was ready for Jabari to be a superstar, and he got hurt. His knees are made out of.
I thought he'd be better than I thought he was deserving to be like the first overall pick after college.
Yeah, me too.
But if you want, you can give us your number 5 spot on the list.
Number 5 is tough because he did have a few good seasons, but he's looked at as a one-hit wonder because his rookie year, he was Rookie of the Year, and that is Michael Carter-Williams, who came out of the gates looking like type of like Lonzo offensive player maybe, and then he just pretty much fizzled out within 5 years.
Yeah, he was definitely not the same player. I think first like year and a half, like basically when he was with the Sixers, it was fine, but once he got traded to the Bucks, it kind of was like the end of like the start of the end already. And then I think he was on my Bulls next, and from that point on, he was just been a role player ever since. Yeah, I mean, my number 5, it's actually funny you picked a point guard that won Rookie of the Year. I'm also gonna pick a point guard who had an insane rookie season, and that is, I'm throwing it way back on this one. It's 1974, the Buffalo Braves, Ernie DiGregorio. This guy, my dad talks about this guy all the time. Like I don't know if he's one of his favorite players ever, but he always has like so much to say about him when talking about the Braves. He averaged 15, 8, and 3 as a rookie. He actually led the league in assists and free throw percentage as a rookie. And after that, I mean, that was his year with career high in points, rebounds, and assists a game. He only fell down after that. He did lead the league in free throw percentage, I believe his last year in Buffalo, but I mean, that's not really, like, a role player could do that necessarily. So I had to go with him for number 5. If you want to start going into number 4 now, what are you thinking?
Well, that was a great find, by the way, because that guy literally could have been in backyard basketball, and I wouldn't know the difference. But my number 4 is Andrew Bynum, who also had multiple good seasons, but as soon as he won All NBA, I think he missed the next season with an injury, and then he was done. And never went back to that form ever again.
I kid you not. If I was thinking so much about Andrew Bynum, like if there was a top 10 list, he would have been on it. Like I was so close to putting him on there. But yeah, you're right. Like after that, like he got traded to Philly, like never played there, and then he had one more year with like the Cavs and the Pacers, and then he just was out of the league. It's crazy too because he's only like what 34 right now, 35. Like he's not even that old. And he's been out of the league for like 8 years. So that's crazy. But my number 4, still going to throw it back a little bit. I'm going to have some more recent ones coming up here. But this one, it's not quite as far back as Ernie DiGregorio. But my number 4, I'm going with in 1995, Dana Barros on the Philadelphia 76ers. It was his only All-Star season, and he won Most Improved Player of the Year. He averaged like 21 points, 8 assists, 3 rebounds, and 2 steals. And believe it or not, shot 49% from the field, 46% from 3, and just under 90% from the free throw line. So he was almost like basically just a fraction away from being in the 50-40-90 club that year too. So that's insane. And then after that, I mean, even before that and after that one season, he never averaged over 13 points a game again. So, I mean, I wouldn't say like he fell off completely. Like he probably was still a decent role player, but definitely nowhere near the player he was. Granted, that was a bad team, that Sixers team. So it was probably like one of those, empty stat guys. And I feel like back then people didn't really look at the empty stat argument as much. Like now it's like you could be Bradley Beal averaging 30 points per game, and just because your team like isn't in the playoffs, like you might miss the All-Star team or something like that. You know what I mean? Moving on. So now we got our number 3s. What you thinking?
So for my number 3 is the guy who he pretty much came in towards the end of the year and started playing a lot because of injuries, and he was putting on highlights. His stats weren't that good that year, but he looked like he was ready to be like a young up-and-coming player, even though he was a little bit older, I think. And that's Jonathan Simmons. He looked so good. They let him go, which was surprising because I feel like Pop would keep someone like him. And then he had about 14 points per game on the Magic. Looked like he was ready to go. And then he got traded and has never really had anything in the NBA since.
Yeah, I still don't really get that trade. Like, I don't know why the Sixers did that. Like, they gave up on Fultz so early, and that was like the big prize. Didn't really turn out into anything. That's a good one though. I wasn't even really thinking of him, but now that you mention it, I'm like, you know what? Like, it's kind of true. Like, I remember, what was it? Didn't he have like an insane, like first game of the season? I think it was either the Rockets or the Warriors that one year, right? And like everyone was hyping him up after that. But yeah, so my number 3, this one's still a little bit older. The 2 after this are gonna be more recent, more modern era. But my number 3, I'm going back to the 1993 Phoenix Suns, the team that made the NBA Finals, and Richard Dumas was their starting small forward. Now he averaged like about 15, 16 points a game, about 5 rebounds a game. He was pretty solid, and he was a rookie when doing all this too. So people thought like he'd kind of help them out, moving forward. But then he got into, that substance usage, you know what I mean? So it kind of took a toll on him. He got suspended by the league for a year, and once he came back, he never averaged over 6 points a game again, and he was out of the league after like just 2 more years. So that's tough. I mean, it's like that Suns team, they made the finals. I think they had the best record in the league that year. Barkley was MVP. Like, who would have known, like, if maybe he didn't get suspended, maybe things would have worked out. Maybe they could have went back the next year, especially because, that's when Jordan had just retired, right? And it seemed like the league was wide open. So, for number 2, what you got?
Yeah, so bringing back to your point before I do my number 2, it's like crazy how easy these guys can phase out of the NBA. And if you look at the young guys now, like Anthony Edwards, Kate Cunningham, you never know like what could happen to any of them, and they could be the next guy that just doesn't have that career. But my number 2 is my favorite player growing up. When he was on the Nets, he was an absolute highlight reel when they let him play. and then he got sent out of the NBA for about 4 years. Was playing in, I don't know if it was China or what. Comes back to the Grizzlies, 20 points per game, 4 assists, 3 rebounds. Marshawn Brooks, and as soon as that season ends, he's back on the bench, which just never made any sense to me.
Yeah, I was thinking about him too. He was also one of those players where it's like at the end of the year he was signed and he started kind of like going off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know why he didn't really get like much of a chance after that. At least like okay, like you're averaging 20 points a game on the Grizzlies. At the end of the year, it's like whatever. But at least you think he'd get like another chance as like a role player on other teams.
Yeah, he's a pure scorer, put off the bench. So
right. So I don't know why they didn't give him that. But I mean, you were mentioning like with Cade Cunningham and Anthony Edwards, like you never know, like maybe these guys could fizzle out like in short time. You never know what could happen in the NBA. And so my number 2, I'm going with a guy who after his rookie year, this guy, he's seen as one of the biggest draft mistakes of all time. But after his rookie year, not a lot of people were saying that. And he was arguably compatible with the person picked right behind him. And that person behind him was Steph Curry. And the person I'm going to name here is Johnny Flynn on the Timberwolves in 2010. Averaged like 14, 4, and 2. I mean, I know the Timberwolves weren't that great, but basically at career highs all around the board. Never averaged over 6 points a game again. And he was out of the league by 2012. And it still is kind of surprising, like how quick he fell out. I think he had a stint in Houston for a little bit after that, but then he played overseas for like a few years, and by 2015 he was done like with professional basketball. But now we got our number 1 spot. Who is the biggest one-hit wonder in NBA history, in your opinion?
Yeah, I feel like no one-hit wonder list could be complete without Linsanity. I mean, he stayed for a bit, but when he came in, carved up the Nets, and then just had a good month of being an absolute show. Greatest show on TV. I was a Nets fan, and I was loving every single Jeremy Lin game as someone who does not like the Knicks. So his one season, it really made everyone think that he was ready to be a great NBA player, but looking back, I mean, it just wasn't that realistic.
Yeah, I think the hype build up for Jeremy Lin was definitely like a one season thing, you know what I mean? And his 2-week stretch, like he basically looked like the best player on the planet, like over that time. I didn't put him. The simple reason I didn't put him is because I feel like Jeremy Lin had a lot of years where he was, pretty decent. Like not like he wasn't like overly like a superstar, but he wasn't like overly bad either. Like he was solid on Houston. He was solid those. I think he played a couple of games with your Nets before he got injured, right?
Yeah.
The Hornets. But so my number 1 is someone who I think he played a little bit with Jeremy Lin, not on the same team, but like the same time frame. This guy, he was a long-term NBA veteran, and it's pretty crazy how this even happened, because it seemed like for so much of his career he just came off the bench and he even went overseas at one point. Like he was basically like out of the NBA. But my number 1 spot on the 2006 Toronto Raptors, the same team that allowed Kobe to drop 81 on them, I'm going with Mike James. Mike James, not the Mike James that played on the Suns, but like the Mike James was on the Bulls near the end of his career and stuff like that. I think he played with the Mavericks and stuff. But this dude averaged 20 points a game, 6 assists, and 3 rebounds. And you'd think like, okay, maybe he played like 10 games or something, like 10, 20 games. He played 79 games, and he started all 79 too. It was his best season for points per game, rebounds a game, assists per game, field goal percentage. And then after that, he never averaged over 12 points a game again. He got a decent, I think the Timberwolves picked him up, and they gave him a solid role on that team as a starter. I think that's when he did average 12 points a game. But after that, like, he kind of fizzled back into being a rotation player off the bench. He even was out of the NBA for a little bit, struggling to hang on. So that is my number one. No other season, I guess, surprised me more than Mike James in 2006. But I kind of want to, before we finish this one off, I kind of want to get your opinion on something. Now, I had a second honorable mention I didn't really list because I feel like it's too fresh. But given what's happened recently, would you say that there could be potential that Miles Bridges would end up on this list now?
That's a good one, yeah. I mean, you hate to see it, but with what he did, you really don't, I guess. So he could definitely be the biggest one-hit wonder at some point, with no pun on that title.
I mean, he had a pretty career year. I think it was like basically career highs along the board in terms of averages. But I mean, yeah, I think the Hornets already they pulled their like qualifying offer or something for him, so he's no longer like under their like checkbook or whatever. It's like a restricted free agent. So basically, it's like, will a team pick him up? He probably won't get a huge deal, and I'm sure, in terms of talent-wise, he would help a lot of teams for a cheap deal. It's just a matter of do you want to be that team that signed him? And you get all that backlash from the media. You know what I mean?
I mean, the way pro sports goes, unless he ends up in prison, which I'm pretty sure he could, right?
Yeah, I think I don't know when they're just determining that, but yeah, I don't know.
Unless he ends up in, he'll probably end up back on the team and getting a shot, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we gotta see what happens with his court case and stuff. I think they're gonna determine it soon. But I wanted to hear what you said on that, because I feel like that's like a low key one that might happen now. It's kind of weird.
For sure.
But yeah, again, I want to thank you for joining me on this debate. You got any other final thoughts before we close this one out?
No, it was interesting to see the names you said, because I was looking through and I felt like you'd have some of the same as me, but we ended up with all 6 different names, so that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, it's a little different because when I did the Finals MVP video last time, for a debate, we had some of the same ones, just a different order, and this one, we all had different ones, and there was some that I wasn't even thinking of. You said Jonathan Simmons, that didn't even come to my mind, or Marshawn Brooks, but yeah, honestly, I thought this was a good video, and hopefully you guys enjoyed. Again, be sure to like, comment, subscribe if you did. Thank you guys for watching, and we're out. Peace.